something. So I'm going to hit that record button. And then I am going to share my screen because I think not everybody wants to um, technical difficulties. And the technical difficulty is me, not the technology. So I want to make that clear right away. Do. All right. Bob, we got that up there for all the technology that we get to have. I cannot see what everybody else sees. So there are some things that I still have to trust but verify. So we will get going. All right. So I am super excited about this whole topic and covering this today. We're going to go through maybe a different perspective than what you may be reading in trade magazines, whether they're from our collision repair industry or on the insurance side of the trade magazines as well, or what you've been seeing talked about and what the software companies or some other people are putting out there. So I'm going to kind of want to get through it, but as you have heard us already kind of talking through this presentation, I have asked a special guest to join us because the one thing I didn't want to do is just have everything kind of be my opinion or what I think. So I brought in Bob Medved, who has been a mentor and a leader in my career going back to 1995. So if you are excited about what Collision Hub does, Bob started it. If you're really angry about what we did, Bob started it. So along with Roger and the rest of those guys in Bloomington. So Bob, take a minute to introduce yourself just so that people can get to know you there.
Yeah, Bob Medved. I've been around the industry over 40 years. As you can see on the screen, I started out as a combo tech. Back then it was collision and refinishing. I would never think about having someone else paint the work that I did, but that's totally different today, as you all know. Did that for a few years after going to a tech school to get an associate degree in collision and mechanical. And a couple of years after I was a body technician.
Collision Hub meeting about all these appraisers and everything working from home.
I'm hearing somebody. Are we good?
Yep. I think Jason's on it.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I did that for a couple of years, and I was asked to go back to the school I graduated, which was Val Tech back then, back when it was in Pennsylvania, as an instructor in collision repair and refinishing. So I did that, and I loved that job. It's probably one of the best jobs I ever had. It was fun working with students, young people who were interested in getting into the trades. Totally different today, obviously. Did that for a couple of years until I started to raise a family and realized I couldn't raise a family on what I was getting paid as an instructor. So I was kind of looking for something else. And a friend of mine who was the paint instructor there came to me one day and said, "Hey man, I'm leaving." I said, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm gonna go work for State Farm." I said, "You gotta be kidding me, an insurance company?" He goes, "Well, they're starting me out at $5 grand a year more than we're making here." I said, "Well, get me an app, I want to make some more money." So that's kind of how I got into State Farm years ago. And it was because at the time they were hiring people who had collision repair experience. Can you imagine that? I mean, people who actually knew how to fix a car. I remember when I was leaving Valtech, my boss at the time looked at me and said, "Well, good luck, this is never going to work." And I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, insurance companies don't want people who know how to fix cars." I said, "Well, they want me, so I'm going. I got benefits. So I did that for a lot of years, spent a lot of years at State Farm as an estimator, worked my way up through estimatics management, up to the corporate level. I was there about half of my career up in corporate in Bloomington, Illinois. Worked in claims training, claims research. I developed a research unit that helped our field people, with OE repair information, things like that. And we also tracked product liability claims on cars that were catching on fire and things like this. So did that for quite a while. Right before I left State Farm, I did a YouTube webcast called High Tech Toolbox, which some of you may still be familiar with. I don't know. Some of those videos are still out there floating around. Had a real good time doing that. And they canceled my show, so I left. Things got kind of weird at State Farm to where I didn't believe some of the stuff that was going on there, so I figured it was time for me to go. So after it's all said and done, end up working out for a paint company, PPG, and here we are. So that's my long sordid history.
And that's the history of Bob, and that's I found Bob, and I was hired in 1995 and trotted up to Bloomington, and Bob and those guys were in the training center, and I'm pretty sure they called back to the claim office and went, "Why did y'all hire her?" So what was that thought? But basically a long career of change. So coming in those 90s, which are, you know, in the 80s and 90s, kind of the glory years, and then up until retirement, we've seen a lot of change. But more importantly, I think, Bob, we've managed a lot of people,
Yeah.
field estimators, call centers. I mean, we've managed and trained it all. So that's why I want to talk about what's coming, and more importantly, we're going to get to how it affects the collision repair industry. But for a lot of shops, there's a lot of confusion on what's really happening in the insurance industry, how it looks, how it works, how it's set up. Some of the myths of how people are hired, how they're trained, et cetera. So we're going to go over some background as well. So that'll help you kind of know how you need to be preparing for this as a collision repair. But the questions I'm getting right now are what's claims, what's insurance going to look like tomorrow? What's claims operations going to look like? I mean, if you follow Collision Hub, we talk a lot about forget the insurer, it's a bill payer, your job is to fix the car. But I know that's paramount on your mind. That's a lot of those checks come in co-payable. You see those logos on those checks, and so it's a thought in your mind. So we want to talk about it and kind of see some opportunity there. There's a lot of talk around, can technology replace claims adjusters and replace claims? I haven't seen a piece of technology yet come close. So I bow up a little bit when people start talking about artificial intelligence. So far, I haven't found a program yet that is better than 30% accurate. So we tell everybody to bring it to us. We'll test it and see how accurate your artificial intelligence can get. And then ultimately, you know, how's this going to affect collision repair is what everybody kind of wants to know today. Great. It's the insurers. That's their problem. They're over there on the side of the fence, but you know, how's it going to affect me there? So we'll get to that. So kind of want to start with a little bit of an overview of what today looks like. So one of the myths that are kind of floating around, I know when I posted the first story about Nationwide is going to go virtual. They're going to keep, Bob, what was it, 5 claims offices total across the country?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so 5 brick and mortar locations. Those of us that have been in claims go, how are you going to pull that off? And we start to kind of panic. And from a lot of a shop's perspective, you've kind of been dealing with people that have been in a virtual environment for a while. So a lot of shops kind of went, well, how's this different? I mean, the adjuster that's been coming in and out of my office has been working from home for the last, 10 years. I finished my career at Nationwide before starting Collision Hub in about 2006. We started to divest real estate. So brick and mortar locations of state claims offices, et cetera. And I was sent to work from home, and so were my estimators, my claims adjusters, from bodily injury to homeowners. So for some of you, 10 years plus, you've been experienced with work from home adjusters, but this is going to be different, and here's why. So traditionally, work from home jobs have been for field-based roles. So those were the adjusters that were supposed to come physically to your locations and look at cars. Those were audit teams. Those were some of the remote claims training teams. I know some of the trainers, we used to call the PCTs, Bob. I mean, they went for home roles kind of early in their career. But these were typically what we would consider an experienced adjuster. So they understood their role, they understood their job, they understood, estimating. They were, in theory, low. Wait, what's a good way to put it, Bob? In theory, were they low? I don't want to say low energy, but it wasn't the same. Is that fair?
Correct. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Well, so the more experienced adjusters made that just a little bit easier. But here's what's in a claims office right now. We're mostly in our brick and mortar locations left in these regionalized centers are what we would consider our call center or high volume roles. So these are people that work in the team environments. If you're used to dealing with Team 46 or, Team 732, whatever it is, they're high volume roles. And those are loss reporting roles. Those are what we call loss services, like a customer service role. Those are your Team 46 people, et cetera. your supplements, your photo estimating teams, your total loss units, total loss handling. A lot of that is still in those brick and mortar locations. But at the same time that all of that is in those locations, they are also about 27 pop-ups. Something's not happy with me today. We also have administrative services in there, human resources. Your executive leadership teams are located in that building. Employee support and services are there. That goes beyond human resources. There's a lot of moving pieces to supporting claims. Just try ordering a replacement printer and figure out how complicated that gets. And then underwriting and a lot of functions. But then on top of all of that, that brick and mortar is housing auto, fire, life health, commercial, lots of different divisions. So when an insurer talks about draining down to 5 actual physical brick and mortars, well, somebody's got to leave the building, right? So, and I don't know, Bob, from your perspective, auto, we always seem to get picked on. We were always like the first to go through every new phase.
Yeah, we're the first to be thrown out.
Yeah, we're always the first to be thrown out. So, yeah. So that's kind of what's in there today. And that's a lot of stuff. And so when we talk about going to a work from home environment, what they're talking about doing is sending some of those high volume roles to a work from home. So we're not talking about the guys that you've been used to seeing coming in and out of your shop for the last 10 or 12 years. We're talking about Team 47 go into a home environment, or total loss, or loss services, or loss reporting, or some of those things going from an at-home environment. Now, it's just not really a technology issue. So sure, a computer can go through a VPN and get into the claim system and stuff, but there's some other things there. So some of the problems that we have in high volume claim roles are turnover rate. No one goes to school and graduates and goes, I want to be an adjuster. Bob, did you ever in your career interview anybody that said, this is what I knew from day one, I wanted to be an adjuster?
Well, you know what? I taught a lot of students over the years, thousands of them. And I said the same thing. I said, anybody ever, wake up one day and decide they wanted to be an insurance person, and out of all those thousands of people, I had one guy one time that raised his hand and said, yeah, I went to school for insurance. I said, you're the guy.
Finally, we found
the only one on the planet. But yeah, whoever grows up dreaming of working in an insurance company, nobody.
It's a tough job. I mean, I got to say, I've done a lot in my career. I mean, I did estimating training. I did SIU. I did all these different departments because I just thought I had to learn everything. But adjusting was the hardest. No one likes you. No one's happy to see their adjuster. No one's like, oh my God, you're here. Let me bake you a cake. Every day was an argument or whatever. And so the turnover rate for that role is high. Bob, do you have any estimation about what you think kind of the current going turnover rate of volume claims is?
Current's got to be super high, 50, 60%, I would guess.
Yeah.
If you're in there 2 years, you're the guy with a lot of experience.
Yeah, you're long in the beard, so to speak. Like
yeah,
that.
They just churn them through. Yeah.
At one point, I was talking to one insurer in their call center environment. The turnover had reached above like 85%, and it was like we're just churning through. And some of that is why some of these call centers are located where they are. They put them, or these 5 brick and mortar locations for Nationwide are the ones that they pick them. They put them where they can find employees. So you'll find a lot of them in college towns. So, and everybody's going, wow. I think about it. There's Arizona, there's Des Moines. Dang, they're in college towns. Yeah, because that works well with people that want to get a degree and still have a full-time job, as you can change that shift work around. So. Some of the other problems we have in this environment with adjusters is how do we drive performance and quality together? So performance is, in these environments, we're tracking how long you're on the phone. If a phone call goes over like a couple of minutes, that's a check mark. You're supposed to handle the customer quickly and move. We're measuring how many calls are in the queue. What's the average wait time?
To give you an example, I talked about this with you earlier, Kristen, was that I had a student one time that was telling me that when I was teaching them how to handle claims properly with a policyholder, she said, well, that sounds great, but I only have 3 minutes. I said, what do you mean 3 minutes? Well, if I'm on the phone with a customer longer than 3 minutes, I get gigged for that. I said, well, what do you do when you have a claim that's kind of difficult and you have to work through? He goes, well, I just tell them I have to hang up and call you right back. That way I get a credit for another call. I mean, is that ridiculous or what? I mean,
It's ridiculous. You know, it's one of those things where this thing came together, and you have a group of people on one side going, well, how do we make sure that these people are on the phone, that they don't put their phone on hold, or they don't, you know, go to the bathroom for 3 hours or so? How can we make sure that we drive performance, which is the numbers side of the business, but then how do we also get quality, which, you know, I've never sat down with an insurer, even in my career and then post-career, where they're like, you know, we're not interested in quality at all. We just kind of want to process. Everybody wants to have a good customer service experience. And so that's very difficult in the way that these volume roles are set up. The brain hurt for me is thinking how I would do that when these people aren't physically in front of me. So managing a call volume claims operation, you know, I'm in my glass cubicle overlooking all of, you know, the other people in their half cubicles, like that picture there, and I can see who's on the phone, and I can walk up and down aisles, and I can help with questions, and I can do things. But from a remote perspective, I'm not going to have that touch time with those people anymore.
well, and you can also hear the conversation that's going on with that claim handler and the body shop or the policy holder. You know, see, are they really saying the right things? You know,
Yeah. Yeah, or it's more like, Bob, did they really just say that? I mean, I can remember 1,000 times when something got said, my ears perked up, and I went on a sprint down the aisle
yeah,
to try to get to that. You're going to need to put that phone
yeah,
on mute for a minute, so I could, like, you know,
yeah,
whatever. But so there was you know, there's that.
yeah.
To drive, when you have an environment that has high volume and high turnover, when you hire people, training isn't necessarily what we want. So at one point, and correct me, Bob, if I'm wrong, at one point, policy school was like 2 weeks and estimating school was like 2 weeks.
Now, policy school was 3 weeks, 3 solid weeks, and there was a test every single day.
If you failed, you
And
went home.
if you failed 5 tests or didn't hold a 70% average, you were not only sent home, but you had to sign an agreement before you came to claim school. If you didn't pass, you would lose your job.
Yeah.
So if they didn't pass claim school, they get a ticket home and no job.
Well, I was pretty happy at least that there was a ticket. I was afraid I was going to get abandoned in Bloomington and have to thumb my way home.
You figure out.
Yeah, you figure out how to get home, loser. But training used to be detailed and involved, and we took time, and there was a lot of time and money, because training takes money out of somebody's budget. If they're not in my claims office actively handling claims, then who's going to pay for them, and how do I account that to my budget? So claims training takes money, period. There's no way around it. But it used to be very involved. Now it's here's a little bit of online training, and then I'm going to set you with somebody, and you're going to watch them work, and then I'm going to give you your own claims. And the beauty of that is that if I got stumped, I could just peek my head up over that half wall cubicle and go, hey, I have a question. Or if we, you know, if we passed each other on the way to the restroom, or we saw each other in the break room, I could go, hey, I have a situation. And that was what we called collaborative learning, or some people like to call it tribal learning. And that was, hey, I don't think we're going to have as many formalized trainers and have this budget for this big training department. Bob may want to share what the budget was for the training department.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
It was pretty massive because we had quite a few higher level people doing the training. Remember who was training? It was the upper level managers and consultants that were actually doing the training. So those were pretty good salaried people there. You know.
Salaries, the training center itself with all those cars and props and all of that had it took to take care of it. That's a big budget. And so a lot of people decided we're going to go to this collaborative or tribal learning style, and we'll let your peers raise you. Yeah, there's some greatness to that in a way, and that in theory, you should be able to get people up and functioning rapidly. The other sidebar theory of that was, well, we would send people to corporate, get them trained, and when they come back, we would tell them to forget everything they had learned, and now they were going to do it our way. So that happened as well. But the issue now becomes, if we go back to that turnover rate issue, is that if we're learning by collaboration, then I'm only going to be as smart as the most experienced person in my unit. And then let's hope that that person has the right experience. So we joke with technicians that you may have 30 years of experience, but you've been doing it 30 years wrong. So you have 30 years of 1 year experience.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
analogy is very true in claims as well. So if I'm tribal learning, that whole entire unit is only as good as the smartest person within that unit.
Or
So
the most experienced person who may not be the smartest. They just may have been there
it's true.
longer, so they assume they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's true. I will tell you that you don't get these conversations as much as you did before, but those 30-year body man conversations that we laugh about are as funny when we talk about the 30-year claims conversations. Sometimes those are well. And then employee development, or I would say the employee development is very difficult in this environment. And then managing that as a manager, you want to develop your employees, but managing that is difficult. That's another thing that I think when we go to the work from home environment, that'll be very difficult. But now you guys have an understanding of, in a way, how it currently isn't perfect. There's a lot of flaws, and sometimes in the collision repair side of this, we experience those flaws because we feel like the people we're talking to don't know our business, or they don't know how to fix cars, and we go, well, I can't believe I'm asking somebody that was at Starbucks last week for permission to replace this panel or do whatever. But that side of the fence has its problems and concerns just like ours. And those those adjusters, man, they're trying to do a good job, but they're just trying to do it with the resources they have. Take away the brick and mortar. At the end of the day, all claims is a people business. I don't care what technology gets invented, it still comes down to people. So, Bob, let's talk about a little bit about what's going to happen when we send volume people to a home work environment. If claims is people, claims is loss. You've had a loss. Sometimes it's a small loss. Sometimes it's a big loss. It could be your home burns to the ground or your car totals or whatever. Claims is loss. And loss is people, and people. Claims is a people business. It's not artificial intelligence and databases, and it's not the coolest and latest and greatest estimating system. And I've gone through my career from handwriting to getting my first Mitchell wand, which I can still remember the shortcut codes for that thing,
Yeah.
to where we are today. And in all honesty, claims is still the same. I don't believe technology has changed claims. I mean, Bob, what's your perspective on that?
No, the real difference is that at one time you had a professional level claims adjuster that knew the policy inside and out, knew how to explain that to the customer. Even if they didn't like it, they understood it. And they knew how to talk to people. They knew how to deal with people, because these are the people who used to go to people's homes and settle claims. They would sit around the breakfast table with people and settle their claims. But now they're, some team member on team 17 that all they want to do is push that thing off to the next person. They don't really want to deal with that. And honestly, they don't know how to deal with it because they're younger call center type people.
Right.
They're lower level employees. And who do they get their support from? They're kind of out there on their own doing what they think is probably right.
Yeah, you got 3 minutes to make this guy who's screaming happy, or make this shop
Yeah.
that's screaming happy.
Yeah. Then you hear stuff like, "Sir, I didn't wreck your car. I'm just trying to pay for it." That kind of thing.
Yeah. And now you
gone.
just really set me off. It gets so there's some lot there in those human issues.
Yeah.
It's not a matter is the technology present. I mean, I can make a case that says we've had the technology for claims people to work from home since 2005. It's a service issue and the employee. So I've got to service the customer, but I've also got to take care of those employees. So some of the things that worry a lot of us with a claims management background, I'm building this really cool software program, but people that sit in claims chairs and work with people. If once you're away from me and you are no longer in my physical realm of being able to see you, employee development and support becomes difficult. So it's hard for me to know what you need. If you're struggling with conversation, if you're struggling with application of policy, it's hard for me to really know where things are going good or bad for you if I'm not around you a lot. There's things that just don't come out in file review. I was on an audit team for a long time. And even in those audit teams, when we would review files, if we got difficult, well, we walked out into the office and grabbed the adjuster and said, walk me through this file. I know I'm missing something. So So there's a lot lost in just trying to be in a remote environment. And then how do you support people? So when this employee gets in a problem, either they get yelled at, or they get perplexed with a situation and what to do. Well, how do you support them? I've got to wait for them to pick up the phone and call me. And folks, we don't do that now. People don't like to make phone calls. We'll kind of text, but picking up the phone, we feel, is an intrusion on our day and on the day of the other person at the other end of the line. So we're not going to be calling our boss every 5 minutes and asking for advice. Now, from a boss's perspective, I don't want you isolated, but I also don't want you making a bad decision. But I don't know how I'm going to support you when you're not around me. Again, we're not talking about the adjuster that's got 10 years of field experience. We're talking about somebody that's probably 1-2 years experience and has been working in call center style environments. Managing that employee's time off, work performance, are they good on the phone? Are they taking enough calls? Or what's waiting in queue? That's going to be difficult. Work-life balance becomes a huge issue. It's an issue with my experienced adjusters. There was a post last night. Bob, I sent it to you. But there was a post last night from a USAA adjuster that had taken an extra job with Bite Squad, or was it Bite Squad or DoorDash?
DoorDash.
DoorDash. And he was excited that he had made an extra $618 a week working DoorDash. Now, the manager in me is like, did you do that in a company car? I mean, because I'm now wondering what that
Or
person's
company
role
time. I mean, you're getting paid to, sit at your computer and work, and you're out, delivering pizzas.
Yeah. And some of that is, Bob, you made a great point yesterday where you don't have anything to come home to anymore. You go to the office and you come home at the end of the day. But you're not coming home, and so that desire to go out at the end of the day, you feel like you have to go somewhere, and so finding that work-life balance. I had adjusters that decided they didn't want to pay for childcare anymore. Well, I'm working from home, so I'll just keep the child at home, and that sounds really reasonable. And childcare is very, very expensive in our country, but you can't do your job and have your kids at home. I'm learning that right now. My kids are teenagers, so I can't imagine if I had smaller.
That did used to work at Steve.
That's going to be that's going to be a challenge, that work-life balance. And then as that work-life balance becomes a challenge, that may lead to more turnover, but it also may lead to more angry, I don't want to say angry, but disappointed, disenfranchised feelings. Isolationism. Once you go from work from home, isolation leads to PTSD. So here's what I'm going to say. And Bob, you probably got more on this. I remember when I first started my career in 1995, and I get to Bloomington and I'm sitting down for claim school, and I'm scared to death because if I fail my first test, I'm going home, but whatever. But one of the pieces of information that was shared was, at the time, one of the top 10 jobs for suicide in the United States was claims adjuster. And it was at that moment I was like, I made what career choice? But it's not a fun job. I mean, if I think about as a body shop perspective, if you had to think about how you feel about adjusters right now, everybody feels that way. The customers, the claimants, the attorneys we have to talk to. No one really is excited to talk to an adjuster.
Yeah.
We found ourselves finding the ability to do our jobs through the camaraderie with our peers, sharing the war stories, doing all that, helps. Once I sent my estimators home, a lot of them were miserable. They all thought it was going to be great, work from home, but then after a while they missed being able to walk through the office and see each other. They didn't want to see me. I don't want to put that out there. None of them ever wanted to see me. But I mean, they missed seeing each other. So that isolationism will lead to PTSD. Sometimes you got to share your war story. You can't really share those war stories with your spouse. So it's not like, if you do happen to be married or living with somebody and they come home from their job at the end of the day, you don't get to sit them down for 3 hours and talk claims with them. That may lead to an increased divorce rate across the industry. But that PTSD thing is real. We experienced some of that from CAT team perspectives. We had a lot of adjusters burn out. We had to learn how to recognize burnout because a burned out adjuster gives horrible service. and can end you up in court. So that,
Well, I think we're all experiencing that now with this, quarantine that we're under. I mean, let's face it, most of the country hasn't been out too much in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's getting kind of old. I mean,
yeah, we all want to go somewhere.
yeah.
So, so that's a really rough thing. That's one of the biggest things from a shop perspective that you're going to have to learn to deal with, is to recognize those tattered and frayed emotions that are on the other end of that phone. Incentives and recognition. When I am working with, and I hate to say it, but I always pick on them with the everybody gets a trophy generation. Incentives and recognition are a huge part of how you build morale, how you build customer and company loyalty, and how you keep people engaged in service. And so those were, for if you hit your claim service goal, everybody got to wear jeans on Thursday, or a potluck, or person with the best call center got to have Friday off, those kind of things. Friday off doesn't work when you're working from home. It doesn't feel like a day off. So because you're still in your house or whatever. When you're working from a call center and you get a Friday off and you get to stay at home and not have to go to the call center, that's a great reward. So once we send these people home, incentives and recognition programs that we have been doing for the last 10 years to drive engagement and function in those departments is how do we do that? How will that look? How do we build a team when you're not sitting with your team every day in a claims office? How do we make you feel like you're a part of something? And then fear and inconvenience sets in. So I dealt with this a lot when my estimators and specifically my BI adjusters and those people went remote. You're afraid to call the manager. You're afraid that it's going to be seen that you couldn't handle it, that you couldn't do it. Or you feel like you're going to be an inconvenience and they're going to get annoyed with you that you're calling too much. So people tend to not call until something festers. And then, of course, it would get to us and we would go, my God, why didn't you call me sooner than that? Bobby, you think of anything else issues-wise with when we think about sending volume employees to the house?
Not really. I mean, it has all the problems that any other, job at home that wasn't at home before is going to have, because you're just not equipped to do that. And just logistically, like, whose internet are you using? Are you getting paid for that internet? Is the company paying for that? What about the space you're using in your house now as an office? Can I write that off, for example? All these different questions. It's not as easy as just go home and work. It'll be great. There's a lot of logistics.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's just like sorting all of that out. And then if we go virtual with video chat with customers, we're going to have backgrounds. So then are these companies going to ship you back? But there's a lot to working from home that has absolutely nothing to do with technology. So when you read these articles that says the technology is there, there's so much more to managing this. And I would really love to, sit down with a company. I'd love to find an industry that has the stress that an adjuster has and see how they took that to a work from home environment and how it affected their employee engagement and satisfaction and turnover and a lot of those things. So that's there. But so we're going to talk a lot today about some of the issues and then, really what technology is there to kind of fill those voids. It's still a people business at the end of the day. So, all right. So if we just up and send these people home, or we start trying to work towards sending them home, what sets in the industry is what I like to call it change chaos. There's been a lot of change chaos. Bob, over your career, we went from a lot of regional offices to super regionals, to select service first. And that change chaos is always there. It takes us a while. We come up with a good idea. We think we've planned it. We implement it. And then we scramble, right?
Yeah. It doesn't work sometimes.
Looked good on paper. Clearly it's not working in real life. But while we work through those issues, because once you go down a road, we're not abandoning the ship by any means. But while we work through those issues, that change chaos takes place. And unfortunately, here comes the body shop. So you're going to be stuck somewhat, I don't want to say stuck in the middle, but you're going to be stuck having to deal with this change chaos from the insurer corporate perspective of trying to drive this change, and then from the frontline employees perspective of actually having to live through this change and still try to do their job. So here's the good news I got for you. Collision repair isn't changing. So collision repair stays the same. Your side of the fence stays the same. And that's, in a way, I like to say historically, from the days that we hand wrote to the first estimate, that matches this car behind me, to where we are today, collision repair is still the same. The customer wrecks a car. That car then comes to you. You write an estimate, you fix it. That's still going to be the model. That's not going anywhere whatsoever. I don't think we're going to have customers want to have touchless drop off. I think that's going to go away pretty soon. Mike Anderson and I did a panel discussion last week, and we're like, hey man, by August, the customer's going to be back sitting in your lobby waiting for an estimate. You're probably going to wish they weren't there, but they're going to be there. So what is changing on your side of the fence is that processing of that claim or to that payment, that processing phase is changing. And we're going to have to learn how to do that. So processing the repair and collecting payment. So shocker is not really about your estimate, the OE procedures and your documentation. It really becomes about your people skills.
Yeah.
And it's going to get more critical that you have those people skills going forward than before. I love this picture. And I use it in a lot of presentations because I always want to remind shops, this is who you're connecting to. So a lot of us envision, if you think about what used to be on the other side of the phone, you think about Bob sitting there being a highly trained, highly skilled repairer himself, discussing repairs with you and coming to an agreement for a payment. But this is who I'm talking to these days. And that's not a bad thing. It just has to kind of change the way I approach negotiations. So the successful repairer going forward post this issue, as more and more go work from home, you must be able to master the timeline, master and control the timeline. You must be able to master documentation, and you're going to have to cultivate connections. Those are the three things that you're going to do. And if you do those very well, this will be one of the best things that's ever happened kind of in a long, long time. It's going to be one of the biggest disruptors, probably going back to when DRP really first kind of took off. This is going to be a good thing. You've seen some shops already posting that they're happy. They're getting their estimates paid faster and better. They're not having as many arguments before. And those are shops that are probably, if we brought them in and interviewed them, are doing a really good job with these three things. So let's get into the meat of what everybody wants to know. Let's talk about cultivating those connections with your customers. Ultimately, the customer is in control of the car. It's their car. They get to decide what is done to it and what is not done to it. The insurer gets to decide what they will pay relative to their contract, but your repair of the vehicle and what you do to it is completely between you and the customer. The good thing is that as a repairer, you now have this really cool advantage in the fact of getting to fix the car means they have to bring it to you. So you actually still get to physically engage with a customer. And there are so many advantages to being able to be in the same space with a person and to be able to build a connection that way. So when we talk about what I'm fearing from a claims manager's perspective of losing physical connection with my employees by sending them in a home working environment, is also the same rewards you get by being able to have that physical connection with a customer. It's easier to trust people, like people, when you're physically around them. It's easier for me to read you when we're together and know, okay, you're not quite understanding what I'm saying. Let me keep going. Things that I don't know on the phone. I can't read your facial expressions or your body language on the phone. Maybe if I can get you on video chat, right? We can do things. So let's go through these. Cultivating that relationship, and this is how you're going to win. First of all, there are just some basic psychological human needs that as a body shop, either estimator, negotiator, no matter who you are, really, I need you to understand. People need to belong. So they need to feel like they belong and that basically I'm in the right spot. So you need to make sure that you're working on, this isn't about, is my lobby organized? Do I have a clean bathroom? Do I have, whatever? But do people instantaneously feel like they belong when they are with you. Either that can be a physical, that can be part of your greeting process. One of the things I hate is when we push a tablet across a desk and we say, fill this out and, whatever. That doesn't make me feel like I belong. People need to feel important, right? They need to feel like they matter. We talk about this a lot when I'm like, I approach a Ferrari repair the exact same way that I approach a Kia repair. There is no difference in my mind because the consumer ultimately is still the same. So how do we make people feel important and make them feel like they matter? And then that third one, Bob, that one's real important to you. You had a lot to,
Yeah.
when we were
Let me just talk about feeling important for a second, because that kind of made me think about this. A lot of shops I go into and have gone into over the years, they have this nice front lobby, and they have this like desk out in front with this big high wall in front of it, so the person behind the desk is about right here, and when a customer comes in, sometimes the customer service rep, whoever it is on the phone, and they don't even acknowledge that person has walked in. They don't even say, I'll be just a second. So anything like that, just to kind of acknowledge that they're there. Then they have this big wall in front of them, which physically, is blocking that customer from that person. So I would really suggest that you work with your CSRs to come out from around that wall and greet the customer personally. This is all about a customer experience when they come to your store. What do they see? How do they get treated? How do they feel? Do you talk to them from over the wall, or do you go out and sit down with them in a lobby maybe and get more personal contact? The next one, the need to feel understood, that's a big one to me, because whether we know it or not, you probably realize this, but if you didn't think about it, today we have up to 5 different generations of people coming through the door. People are living longer. We have customers from all different types of generations. And what the golden rule was that your mom taught you, treat everyone like you want to be treated. Well, that doesn't work in business. It's basically treat everyone like they want to be treated. You really have to read the customer when they come in the door quickly. What generation might they be from? What might they like? What might they don't like? How do they want to be communicated with? Those types of things. And then on top of that, you have personality differences. You have people who are aggressive, which means that they want to know when the job is going to be done. They're going to hold you to that date, and they want to know everything's going on. You're that kind of a person. You've all dealt with them. And then you have somebody who's just agreeable. Yeah, whatever, that's fine. Here's the keys. Call me when it's done. But they really don't trust you 100% just yet, but they're just going to be kind of agreeable to everything. Then you have people who like to talk. People who want to tell you about every part of the loss and what happened. And there was a dog crossing the street. You have to, here's what I always told people in this business. You get paid to do 2 things as a customer service rep you don't know you get paid to do. The first thing you get paid to do is you get paid to get yelled at when it's not your fault. Because these people are pissed off because they had an accident, and they want to yell at somebody. And they're going to either yell at you or the insurance company or both. So get used to that. But the second thing you have to understand is you get paid to do is that you get paid to pretend to care on days when you don't. Okay? Because when a customer comes in, it's showtime. I don't care how bad your morning was. I don't care if the kids were bad, the dog was going crazy. When you get in that door, that customer has to feel like, my God, this is the worst thing I've heard this week or this month. And not be patronizing, but to be honestly caring of that customer's issues. Because when you work in a body shop, it's like working in an emergency room in a hospital. Oh, gunshot wound, take them to examination room 3. Head trauma, okay, we'll get OR on it. And you're just going through the motions because you see it all the time. So if a customer comes in with damage, it isn't that bad, and you basically say to them, oh, hey, it's not that big of a deal. Well, it's a big deal to them. So, needing to be understood is a huge thing for a customer coming into a body shop. Over the years, for some reason, we've just pushed a customer out. It's like us and the insurance company. That's it. Customer, go over there and we'll be right with you. But today, especially with what we're talking about today, with these claim people that are isolated at home, we have to really work on getting that customer on our side immediately. Making them feel comfortable, making them feel welcome, putting that virtual arm around the shoulder saying, hey, I understand you're upset. It's going to be okay. And this is why it's going to be okay. Because what we want that customer to feel is, I really trust you when I give you the keys to my car. I know you're going to do a good job. That's the feeling we have to get with them. So I don't think we pay much attention to that today, but we really should start doing that because it's going to bode well for us when we try to get the money we deserve from the insurance company that's refusing to pay for something. Then you get a customer on your side, and it really does help out.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the only way we get paid is the customer, period. I mean, the customer is going to have those conversations. The customer is going to push for the payment. The customer is going to push the supplement. That's what they have to do. And so that personal connection, that's our value is I can remember when I first started handling claims, I would go out and like Bob said, I'd sit at the kitchen table and settle the loss. Well, I had eye to eye contact. Pretty much 99% of the time, the customer was on my side. So, and that worked very well for me. And then now I don't have that personal contact. The shops, you guys have it. And that's amazing. It's an amazing gift. Don't discount it. Don't let it go. Don't think it's part of the motions or.
But when you combine that, Chris, when you combine that with how bad the service has gotten on the claim side, we win. I mean, we win because we have the customer. We're face to face, and they're getting treated terribly at the insurance companies because they're just getting pushed through like any other call center,
Yeah. And it's a training thing. So when I talk to, I mean, there's still some people that have that 30-year experience that I know that are still holding chairs at the insurance company, and you tell them what happened. Hey, you're not going to believe it. I just got off this call and this is what they said. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So that's not the service that I mean, if you get to that top level of corporate, that's not the service that they want policyholders to get, but that's a training issue and a work life issue, how call centers are set up. And so we have that advantage. Checkmate Body Shop, we get to physically sit in front of the customer. Please take advantage of every time you get to be face to face. And let's talk about that need to feel safe. So, and I want to reiterate, these are from consumer psychologists. So if you ask a consumer psychologist or behavioral psychologist what it takes to close a deal, get a contract, make a sale, et cetera. And these are just the basic human needs. And so that's kind of what I love about them. But people need to feel safe. So how do I make people feel safe in collision repair? Well, it's not like we guard the doors with guns and send out an armed escort to bring them into the building. I need to make them feel safe about what I'm going to do with that car and make them feel safe that I am the best choice for that there are other shops or other people in the market that aren't going to care about their safety the way I do, that they can sleep at night knowing I have their car. But I've really got to work on making people feel safe. And, they want to know that they've made a good choice, that they're all, if we think back to the 2020 and the Dateline NBC's episodes where they have hidden cameras on mechanics and stuff, we still very much as auto repairers deal with that thought that we're going to get you somewhere or another. So it's part of my job to make you feel safe. They need to feel needed. So one of the things that I would say as an insurer, I did very well was I convinced you to get the insurer out of the conversation. I convinced you that you only had to talk to me. It's between me and you, that the consumer didn't need to be bothered. They just wanted to drop their keys and come back later when the car was repaired. And I talked you into a lot of that. And you believed it. And then what was I doing? Well, when I left your shop, I called the customer and I talked to them. Because I wanted to have more conversation time with them that way. So, but people need to feel needed. So make sure that the customer understands that they're going to be needed in this claim, that this isn't a passive process for them, that you need their help. And that's very important. That works out really well. And then I always like to drive in here the importance of people like to hear their name. You like to hear your name. We all like it when people, call us by name. We still react every time. I mean, I always tell the story. I could be playing basketball. I could be in an arena. There could be, 5,000 people in there screaming, and I couldn't hear a thing unless my mama stood up. And as soon as she said Kristen Renee, I heard it clearly. So we all have a basic reaction to our name. So make sure that you're constantly including when you're meeting with a customer that you're saying their name back, you're saying your name, that you're making that connection. It is a small little psychological trick that pays huge dividends. When people kind of push back to me on these small psychological tricks, I ask them, how much do you like Chick-fil-A? And they go, oh my God, I love Chick-fil-A. I go, well, you probably love Chick-fil-A. One, let's not lie, the food's probably pretty good too, but you love the my pleasure and may I help you and thank you. So small little things, psychological tricks on our brain trigger endorphins in a way that we make a positive relationship or a positive connection with that person, we remember those little things. So don't ever let the little things slip away. Now, here's the hard part, Bob. we have to cultivate connections with these people on the other end of the line. So the bill payer, as we like to refer to them, these work from home people, or even in the call center still with emotionally frayed, PTSD driven. I mean, it's a rough job. I'm not gonna lie, but we have to make connections with those people. One of the worst things we do is we try to just push body shops. I just want to push the facts of the repair, and then we wonder why we don't get anywhere. So if you can learn these basic human principles and apply them with this new world order, things do get simpler. Ultimately, yes, the consumer is still responsible for the bill, and the consumer still needs to be involved in this. But there are some things you can do that move things better and have better outcomes without having to constantly run down and head to the courtroom. So let's go back through that. People need to feel like they belong, right? So if I'm pushed in a work from home environment and I'm kind of separated from my team and I feel like I'm on this island out here anywhere, I'm trying to figure out where I belong in all this. Do I feel connected to my company? Do I feel connected to the repairer? I kind of feel like I just don't really belong anywhere. So I got to work real hard early in my conversations with this person to just let them know that they belong. They're part of this process. They've got some say, that I want them to kind of feel like this is a positive experience for them, that I don't think that they're a nuisance to me. So I want you to think back as a shop. If you start every conversation with the Starbucks barista that I feel like is a nuisance, that this is, and I don't want to say beneath me, but it's beneath me that I'm having to explain the supplement process to you. You're not on my same level. You can't fix a car. Bob, have you ever seen that statement works well for any shop? As soon as they go, what do you know about car repair? Has that worked for anybody in your career? I lost him.
Questions get answered, like why aren't we getting paid for this, and why would you think that, and what makes you believe that, and just have a regular conversation. Because I know it's tough, because we're trying to get paid for stuff we know we need to do. We know they don't want to pay for it, and the first reaction is, hey, when's the last time you fixed a car, that kind of a thing, and then you're off on the wrong foot and things just go south after that. The next point, I need to feel needed. What that's all about is, anytime I want something from somebody, when I talk to them, I'll usually say, hey, I can really use your help. So people like to think they've helped somebody. So I would start out that way and talk about how they can help get this claim process moving, get this repair moving, things like that. Need to connect on an emotional level. The job is a numbers job, and that's the biggest problem. We turned a service organization in the insurance industry into a call center organization, and nobody likes call centers, because the real problem is that back in the day, each adjuster had their own set of claim files that they would work on. Okay. Today, they don't have any responsibility for any one claim file. It's only that one phone call, that one connection, that one little time, the 3 minutes on the phone. That's all I have. I get to move it on. And then what frustrates the hell out of us is that the adjusters don't do anything to log what happened during that conversation. So every time either we call or a customer calls, they don't know what happened before. So we have to repeat everything that happened in the past, which is really frustrating to us and also frustrating to the customers. So that's kind of where we are in this numbers job thing. And as body shops, we can't do anything about that. We just have to learn to deal with that a little bit better. So the people you have that are writing your estimates, or the people who are, customer service reps who might be dealing with these adjusters, you have to have the right people to have the right frame of mind. You can't have a hothead in there screaming at people, because that's just not going to get you anywhere. But you have to maybe go in with a little bit of empathy and a little bit of conversational tone, what's happening in your world, that kind of a thing. I think it would go a long way. And again, they do need to hear their name. Maybe they don't even tell you their name at first. Say, by the way, who am I speaking with? That type of a thing. So those are the things we really have to deal with when we're dealing with adjusters who are out there on their own right now, because a lot of them don't want that job. A lot of them are in that job for as long as they can stand it, then they're gone. These call centers are what's called like an employee beer can mentality. You bring someone on, you pop the top, you suck them dry, you crush them flat with work, then you throw them out and you get another one. So there's a lot to be said about that. And it's just not the right way to operate some positions, but call centers are fine. Regular call centers are fine, but they've turned claims into call centers. They want to turn things over quickly. So that's why we're in the problems we are today. And I see Kristen's back. Hey, welcome back.
Speaking of technology fixing all our problems, right? So sometimes technology is a problem. I will tell you that one of the biggest takeaways, name, when you say their name and ask their name, that's the quickest way to put them at ease. So if you want to make them feel safe, needed, and important, name is a great tip for that. It works out really well. Same thing from you, typically. If you hear somebody says your name, you go, oh, hey. So same thing. So you want to use that as well. It's my little psychological tip there for you. Tip for the day. So having the customer connection, having a connection with the adjuster is great, but ultimately success comes with the documentation that I have and what I have when I get ready to go to negotiations to get paid. So the difference between those shops that you see online that get paid and those don't really are going to come down to controlling the timeline. So when I say control the timeline, it's very important that you know the complete cycle of the vehicle. Now that's before it gets to your parking lot. That's while it's on your parking lot. That's after it goes. So controlling the timeline of service and events is critical. Most shops, you guys don't start taking documentation or keeping notes until the customer brings it in and drops the keys off, because you're like, well, I'm the repairer. That's all I'm supposed to know is when it came on the lot and what I did with it while I had it. But there are some key factors and some key things that you have to know. I always want to know when the accident happened. I want to know from accident date to claim report date to when did you first hear from the adjuster. I want to know where I fit in to that timeline. So in the middle of all of these events, when did you come see me? Am I pre-turning the claim in? Am I post-turning the claim in, but you hadn't heard from anybody? That's controlling the timeline. You can do that with just real crystal clear communication with the customer, and then eventually when the third party gets in that mix with you and you're talking back and forth. There are forms, contracts, emails, text, letters, things, all these kinds of things that you can do with people, but you need to know that timeline. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into a discussion about termination of rentals. Let's say if it's first party, there's a contractual limit on that rental. It doesn't matter. But third party, and we're talking about termination of rental, and someone's trying to tell me that they've been in the rental for 47 days. And it's so valuable for me to be able to go back and go, I agree with you. They've been in the rental a very long time. I can see that the accident date happened here. They say that they reported it on this date. From the data report till, you sent them the first communication. Well, that was another 8 days. Then it got here and, you guys wanted to come out again. Well, that was another 8 days while I waited on that. But being able to have that timeline discussion really came in handy to be able to keep that customer in the rental. Because as soon as, whether it's third party claim, as soon as that rental's over, the whole pressure on me becomes a whole different ballgame to get the car out. So controlling that timeline is very, very important. Being able to articulate that timeline is even more important, and then having that timeline at your disposal. So I can't, I'm trying to bring Bob, you can go back to your management days. How many times someone would walk into our office and they would go, I need to ask you if we're going to pay blah, blah, blah. And the first thing we would do is go, walk me through the timeline. So, because before I could make a decision about one thing, I needed to know what had happened before. And so body shops, that's your weakness. Timeline and documentation are your weaknesses, and they cost you a lot, but if you get better at them, they can help.
Well, another thing too, in today's environment, people want to sue body shops, and if you document everything that's going on with that file and that claim, that could save your bacon a lot of times, because if you don't have any proof or any dates or times or who you talk to, this type of thing, that could be a real issue because you have no idea. I know when I was in the insurance world, we used to go on these things called arbitrations. That's when we were trying to get money from another insurance company. They didn't want to pay us on a subrogation claim, for example. And we went before this arbitration board. And I got to tell you, every time, whoever had the most documentation in their file, 9 times out of 10 won that. Just the way it was, because it told a story. It just told a story. And like my old boss told me coming up, if it's not in the log notes, it didn't happen. I know it's a pain in the ass to do it that way, but honestly, you'll be so much better off in documenting the timeline on these repairs for a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah, and that means you're going to have to get in there and figure out what was going on before you got it. And some of you get cars for, maybe 30 days or so after the initial loss. Maybe there was a coverage investigation. There was all kinds of other stuff going on before you get it. It's not that you're going to jump in the middle of the coverage investigation, but you need to know the timeline of events that have transpired. Once it's on your lot, you're going to be able to control the timeline, but you have definitely got to be able to get that back information. It comes in handy in so many ways, but so many of us think that my only thing that I need to know is the date that they walked onto my lot. But make sure that part of your customer intake, part of your contracts, your forms, whatever you have being filled out, is taking into account that timeline. I've probably had 3 or 4 just this year alone where the timeline has saved the day. So I did get a call this morning, Bob, about an insurer that wants to sue a body shop. So that was interesting. That's like the new world order. But but I was like, huh? What? No, wait, really? No. So controlling the timeline. If you don't have a documentation system, and please understand that your estimating system is not a documentation system. It's an estimating system. It's not for claim logs and notes and forms, and that's not what an estimating system does. So if you don't have a documentation system, you need to actively work on getting one. My favorite is Google Drive. So it's free, or I can pay $1.99 a month and get 5 terabytes of data. But you have got to have a way to keep really consistent records that have necessarily nothing to do with the estimate or the repair of the car. You've got to be able to have separate documentation for timeline and some other events. So make sure you have a system. Make that your takeaway. I think, is it Thursday? It's either Thursday or it's next week. I'm actually going to do a webinar on how you can use Google Drive in the body shop. So if you don't have a system, if you've been using maybe something your paint company got you, or something that is within your estimating system, and that's how you've been, tracking or documenting timelines and events, then make sure you don't miss that webinar. Coming up next, right? All right. So you're gonna have to master documentation. I want to be very clear that I want you to think of your timeline and your documentation separately, but they do cross over. So timeline, a lot of it is me getting information secondhand from the customer. I'm going to get that information. The customer's going to tell me loss date, report date, stuff that's been going on before I got involved. And then as soon as I get involved, I'm going to send some sort of confirmation communication to just say, hey, this is what's been going on, right? Now I've established that beginning timeline. There's no going back and going, no, it didn't take us 16 days before we finally made a repair decision and ate up all of the rental during that time. So please understand that documentation is separate from the repair. Bob, I don't know about you, but when I talk to shops and go, how's your documentation? The first thing they always tell me is I make line notes and I take good photos.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's not documentation. So, so some things that you need to be documenting. You need to be documenting incoming and outgoing phone calls. Sometimes those are about a specific repair. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's a generalized call that you need to be documenting, but you definitely need to be documenting all incoming and outgoing phone calls. Now, how do you document a phone call? Do you just make a log note that says, received call from Miss Smith at 3:05 and she said blah? Occasionally, that's a legitimate way of documenting it. And then occasionally, if some sort of directive has been given in that phone call. I was reading a thing from a shop the other day that said they had incurred a tow bill and a bunch of expenses because an adjuster had called them and said, go get this car, bring it in, and write an estimate. So the shop immediately which I was baffled. I don't know if I'd ever send a tow truck after a call from an adjuster, but the shop immediately sent a tow truck, went and got this car, brought it in, tore it down, wrote an estimate. Then they decided there was no coverage, so they didn't want to pay for anything. And part of my conversation was, well, what was your documentation process for before you sent the tow truck? What did you do? Well, nothing. He called me and told me to send the tow truck. So sometimes if I'm giving a directive that is either going to incur a financial loss, or it's going to cost me money, I'm going to have to do something, or it's going to cost the customer something, then there's a follow-up email after that conversation. This will confirm our conversation of today in which you instructed me to do blank. Now, two things it does. One, it solidifies the timeline. So there's definitely no doubt that conversation took place. And then one, it sets that directive in somewhat stone. So if Team 47 adjuster calls me and says, go send a tow truck to get that car, and I do, but let's say Team 47 adjuster doesn't make a log note, which that happens, right, Bob?
Oh yeah.
Dropkick the fun, right? So they don't make a log note. And then the next time I call back, I get a different adjuster.
Yep.
Am I screwed? No, because I sent the confirmation communication of the phone call. So when we talk about how can you confirm something took place, making a log note that just says received phone call, blah, sometimes doesn't work. If money's on the table, I need to send a confirmation email. Now, keep in mind, it's hard enough when they're in a call center environment. And remember, I can't be on the phone more than 3 minutes, or I've got to get a customer to call me back or whatever. Then you never know when a disruptor is going to happen. Like I put my phone down because I want to make a log note, but I didn't put it on hold, and they immediately shoot another call to me, and I'm like, ugh! So now I got to take it, and I got to hope to remember to go back to the file. Sometimes file notes don't get in the system by accident, not intention. Sometimes I do believe there's some intention there. I've done enough audits to go, you did that on purpose. But I've got to now think about home environment. If I go work from home, the dog gets in a fight, the dog barks, the kid cries, the mailman or Amazon rings the doorbell. I mean, there's going to be all these other possible disruptors that are going to happen between that phone call I had and then me doing something and them doing something. So confirmation documentation is huge. Bob, you got any stories on that? I gotta imagine you got some.
Well, the only one that comes to mind, and it's not one story, it's multiple stories of the same story that, when I worked at State Farm, there was a lot of times when adjusters committed the company to coverage that it didn't have, simply because of their instruction to the shop or what they said to the policyholder. Insurance companies pay a lot of claims they don't really have coverage for because someone in that organization screwed up and told somebody or put something in writing that they would cover something. So the good news is you can get paid for stuff you may not be able to get paid for otherwise because they made a mistake. But if you don't have that documented, you're not going to have an opportunity. So it does happen a lot.
Right. I love estoppel. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I love that they stopped teaching it too, because now it gets paid for a lot of things.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. Sometimes I need to document the lack of incoming phone calls. So if I'm not hearing from somebody, whether that's even the customer or whether that's from the insurer or they've hired an IA or whatever, when I'm not getting contacted, I need to document that. So one thing I need to tell you right now, and this was a pet peeve in claims, is that we used to have this thing called diary of file, right? And so the diary on the file meant I had worked that file as far as I could take it. I had either sent a letter or I had made a phone call or whatever, and I was waiting on something to happen. So I would put a diary date on that file, and oh, Bob, help me out. Was it every Tuesday and Thursday? Was diary day?
Yeah.
Okay, so I could pick like the next available day. I could have that file re-pulled for me on Thursday. This was before technology, before claim system and whatever. But I could diary it for a week or whatever. And my diary date depended on the importance of what it was I was working on. Now, here was the beauty. My supervisor had a diary date too. If they got in the file before I did and decided that I had not applied the appropriate diary date, it was a bad day, meaning they would come to me and go, Kristen, you don't wait 5 days for a customer to call you back. You're not passive. Claims is not passive. You don't you don't get to send a letter, leave a voicemail, and then forget about it until either it blows up or someone calls you back. You got to stay on it. So that was one of my very early lessons, was never let something rot. And so us in the body shop business, we'll send in a supplement or we'll send in a phone call, and then we kind of forget about it until someone inspires us to reopen that file, so to speak. They either call in or the shit hits the fan and everybody's upset or whatever. So I need to be diaring lack of incoming phone calls, and that means you guys are going to have a system. Google is great for that. So I can set a Google diary date on an RO number, and I get a pop-up message, and I've either talked to the customer beforehand, and then hopefully I've changed the diary date, but I get a pop-up message, and I can either service that, or I can go, oh wait, I'm still pending. Now, if I've had a lack of an incoming call, I set a diary date, it comes in, and I still haven't heard from them. Now it's time for a letter. I may have to send some for a certified letters. Please don't forget how effective they are. I know that we live in a world of technology and we think, oh, I got a text message and an email. Certified letters are fantastic. And man, do they inspire people to call you. So I knew that when I got a certified letter at the claims office, I had better get on that file, that they were serious and really wanted something to happen. So I may document the lack of service response. That may mean I set a supplement in and 4 days later, I still haven't heard. You guys have to document how long you wait. And when I talk about documenting how long I wait, I send that request in. I may give them 24 or 48 hours, whatever I've decided to allow in my graceful period of, if I'm in a good mood. If that 48 hours or whatever goes and I haven't heard from anybody, then I have a follow-up email that goes to the customer and to the adjuster. I send in my request. It's been 48 hours. We haven't heard. I diary it again. Maybe I wait another 48 hours. It's now been another 48 hours. We haven't heard. When the customer gets that second email that they still haven't gotten a response to their supplement, what do you think the customer does? They suddenly are actively involved and going, why aren't you responding to my shop? So when some people are saying it takes them 7 to 10 days to get an inspection, I got a lot of shops that are getting inspections in 24 to 48 hours because the gauntlet has been laid down that we're serious. And if you don't get out to look at our cars, you're going to suddenly start getting a lot of phone calls.
Well, it just goes back to the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because I've heard some horror stories in shops where, they're waiting for a supplement for months. I mean, months. The car's gone. They're still waiting for a supplement. And why would we have to do that? It's just ridiculous. So what you're talking about is giving them basically a time limit demand to answer you. And you have to, I know it's a pain to keep, sending emails or writing letters or sending certified letters, but they're going to know, like you said, they're going to know you're serious if you do it that way. Otherwise, they're going to just ignore it,
Yeah. And then we have to remember that in this chaos that's going to happen, this change chaos, things are going to get lost.
Oh, yeah.
You start thinking about transferring between departments and people from work from home environments. And there's going to be some lost claims. This is going to be clunky. It's going to be rough to work through. I mean, no matter what technology we had, Service First rolled out, we thought we had it. And oh my God, was that clunky. So it was a mess. And we had very experienced estimators that we had sent to that first round of Service First units. So we planned. We thought the technology was there. And you know what? We screwed up some stuff. And so that's going to be the same thing. And so stuff's going to get lost. And if you're not one of those people that's constantly on top of stuff, honestly, your customer's going to suffer. One, it's going to take them longer to get their car repaired. They may run out of rental coverage, et cetera. So there's some things to get involved there.
Well, here's the thing, too. If you think about any program an insurance company put out that made your life miserable or didn't work, just remember that program was thought out and planned out before it was launched. This, with just sending people home, was just because of COVID-19. Now we're doing this. There's no program. There was no planning for this. So a lot of stuff's going to happen.
That's a real good point, Bob. We were talking about that the other day. I think I started in 95. So 1992, Hurricane Andrew happens, and Andrew was massive. And it was at that time the company decided we got to have a national catastrophe team. We can't just be taking people out of regions anymore. So 92, the idea of we're going to make a national catastrophe team happens. I get hired in 95. And I'm supposed to do catastrophe. That's what hey, we're going to do this NatCat thing. It's going to be awesome. And we think it's a perfect fit. And it was a great sales pitch. It was like joining the Navy. It was kind of cool, right?
Exactly what it's like.
But then that didn't happen until 97. And so if I think about it, it took 5 years to launch the NatCat program. And oh my God, was it clunky when we started. We were driving places and writing estimates with books. And I mean, you would think if a 5-year planning session, we would have been oh so much more prepared than from when Fargo, North Dakota flooded. So we were in short sleeve shirts and khakis because we were in training in Texas. Fargo floods, and they're like, "Hey, you need to go to Fargo, and it's 40 below." What? So, where are my issued long johns? But so that's a great point. Is that we typically when moves like this are made, there's years of planning, and now suddenly it's just like, we're going to do it tomorrow. That said, I want to say the industry probably. I stepped away from the insurers in 2008. It's been a long time, but there has been planning and trying to get to this moment, but by no means were we ready for this. So some things were in play, but we weren't there. Make sure you're still documenting your repair process. And when I say repair process, that's not procedures. That's your seam sealers, your foams. That's all the stuff that you need to document that goes around the estimate and those things. Documenting your OEs, documenting your emails, keeping track of all of that, logging that in the RO so that they're searchable, they're findable, and then text messages. You need to be documenting text messages. Now, here's one of my pet peeves. I am not a fan of automated text messages. So I'm not a fan. Keeping the customer informed and updating a customer on a claims process are two completely different things. I am not a fan of automated messages going out to customers. At one point, there was a service that was like, your car is happy here. No, it's not. My car's not happy there. It's, I mean, that's cute, but no. They're problematic in a lot of ways. The big thing for me is I think a lot of shops mistakenly think that automated messaging is customer service, and it's not. It's removing the one thing you have, which is personal service. Now, I'm not opposed to texting customers, and I do. And there's a couple different ways to do that. If you have a singular person that's responsible for the texting, then you may want to use a phone. If you have multiple people that are going to be texting, you may want to use a texting service. So there are web-based texting services in which the customer can have conversations, but it's documented in an Excel format. So I'm not having to constantly have my employees on their own cell phones take screenshots and put those into files so that we have documentation.
Hey, Kristen, are you seeing that question that came up?
Yeah, I just saw it pop. Dean, would you or do you see a need to document emails separately or saved email good enough? I always, Dean, in my timeline, so like I have my own like claim log. So very much my days as an adjuster have heavily influenced what I've brought over to the collision side. So I have my claim log, and I will say received email or sent email in the date and time log, and then I will print those to PDF, and then they're saved inside that RO folder for the actual physical documentation. So I've kind of got it documented both ways. To me, in court, every time I ended up in court and I was going through my claim log, the plaintiff attorney, because I was always getting sued, the plaintiff attorney was going line by line through my log. And so they were looking for holes, and then I was trying to match. So if I had a claim log that said I had sent a letter, then on this date, they wanted to go find a letter that was dated that date. If I had said I'd sent a letter on March 3rd, but they went over and the letter was dated March 6th, then they would go, you didn't send it on March 3rd, did you? So, and then I would have 4 hours of deposition explaining the 3-day difference between my log note to the date on the letter. So there's some things that are ingrained in me the hard way because I lost cases. So, point blank. But consider texting services if you are going to have multiple people. If you have 4 or 5 estimators and a couple of CSRs and they are going to be text messaging customers, then consider a service for that, because you can print that out in Excel spreadsheets and it makes tracking those conversations a lot easier. This is not Perry Mason. It's not like we're going to go to court and it's going to be 3 years later and I'm going to call Verizon and they're going to give me all your text messages. That doesn't happen. So they can't tell me physically what was said in the text messages. So your ability to keep that, specifically if directive is given, is huge. And then if you are using a texting service that's automated with your estimating system or whatever, just really think about it. Think about at the end of the day, is that service you want to give? Some people say, yeah, person, that's the service we want to give. Some people are like, yeah, I think we could do something a little different maybe. But our personal connection to the customer is the only thing that differentiates us from the other side of the fence. Sometimes my personal connection with the customer is the only thing that can differentiate me from my competition in the same town. So the more personal I can be, the better I can be. Nobody wants to do business with big box, do they? I mean, especially right now, I think you see more people go and eat at local restaurants, do local business. So take advantage of being local, right? All right, clunky, but we made it through it. I only lost service once. That was great. I love this picture, and I always want to end this discussion with this picture. Are you going to be a beacon, or are you going to be the rocks? So having a claim is traumatic, and I am blessed, and I don't want to say blessed and grateful, but one of the first claims I ever really handled was a death claim. It was when they first turned me loose, and I learned very quickly that what I was doing had absolutely nothing to do with what I knew about cars. Larry Wallner, you heard Bob mention him earlier. Larry Wallner made that very clear to me when my ego, the size of Texas, sauntered into Bloomington, that there were a million people on the planet that knew more about cars than I did, but that the only thing that they cared about was, did I love the customer, and was I going to take care of the customer? And I could not know cars and still do a great job caring for the customer. And handling that first death claim really brought that home to me, that this is about people. This is about trauma. There's no technology. There's nothing that's ever going to take that away. What we think is insignificant, it's a scratch on a bumper. Sometimes could be a scratch on a bumper because you ran over the kid's bicycle, but the kid doesn't live with you anymore because of a divorce. And so there's an emotional connection to the scratch on that bumper. I don't know, Bob, I've had that happen before where I got a little shitty, and I thought something was an inconvenience, and a customer blasted me, and I realized that scratch was a big deal.
Yeah. Like I said, and you don't trivialize any little bit of damage that's going on in the customer's car, because it's a big deal to them, because they don't live in this world. What is it statistically? They have an accident once every 7 years or something like that. If even that, I mean, it's a big deal. And then on the flip side, a lot of times they look at something and don't think it's a big deal, and we say, "Oh, that's a big deal." That scratch on the bumper can be looked at two different ways.
You're gonna die. I mean,
Yeah.
your bumper is, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
So, but that was really a lesson that I got to learn early. It's influenced me my entire career. A couple of years ago, I gave a speech about that first death claim. That was a gentleman. His wife and children all died in the same car wreck on the morning while she was trying to take him to school. So he went to work with a wife and 4 kids. He came home a widower. And that family is buried in the family cemetery where my family is at. So my grandparents and everything. And so for a long time, I would have to see those gravestones, and I would see him visit them on holidays, on Easter and Christmas and those places. And that was just a constant reminder to me that what we do is important, and what we do is emotional, and we can either be beacons or we can be rocks. And sometimes we get so frustrated, we want to be a rock, right? And we want to smash things, and we want to hit things, and we want that. But then if I look at it from the consumer's perspective, then I've got to be that beacon for them. And that means that us as shops, we're going to have to learn some psychology, and we're going to have to learn how to handle some of the stressors and emotions and clunkiness and just flat out failure that's going to happen on that other side of the fence. Because I do believe when these people go home, any last shred of emotional connection to the customer is going to go away. And it's going to be my job to tell that story and try to drive that emotional connection back, because that's how we get OE procedures paid, is when I can make it personal and make you want to feel safe and make you want to make somebody else safe. So I can't believe I got through all of this and I only have one question from Dean. So if you have questions, you've got Bob, we're talking 40 years of experience here. He's been a change master within the insurance industry. And then my just general overall bad attitude. So if you if you've got any questions, now's the time to ask them. And you can unmute your mic, or you can put it in the chat room for us. I'm gonna stop my share so I can see everybody. All right. Wow, we either did a great job or we dropped it, Bob.
We bored the hell out of them. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. So I did start hitting the re-record when I got back on. I will see about putting these two segments together, editing them together, and getting that back out on YouTube. If it is a technical difficulty, then Bob and I may meet up again and re-record this because it's just valuable information that we think needs to be out there. If you have a question but you don't want to ask it for whatever reason that is, this was a non-registered webinar. We wanted people to be able to come and go anonymously. If you have a question and we didn't get to it, or you want to ask it separately in a more private situation, you can always go to the Collision Hub Facebook page and send us a private message, and we'll be happy to take anything we can there. Or you can email me. It's very simple. It's just Kristen at Collision Hub. I will warn you today, there are 8,300 messages in my in tray. I'm working hard. So I'm trying to get to them. So if it takes me about a week or so to get back to an email, please forgive me. But you can send your messages in on the Facebook page. We'll be happy to get them. If you got questions for Bob, you can always send those to us on Facebook, and we'll get them to Bob and put him in touch with you while he's hanging out in that finished basement of his. Hey, Jason, are there finished basements in Wisconsin?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting in my office in my finished basement. Yep.
So you and Bob have the finished basement office thing in common.
That's right.
Well, you know why you have to have a finished basement in the Midwest? Because tornadoes come and tear your house to shreds, and you have to have a place to hide.
In Arkansas, we just head for the barn. It works out really.
That's going to be gone. That's going to be gone. That barn is not going to stand.
It's always funny. You'll see the pictures, the barn standing, the trailer's gone. So
well, trailers are always gone.
Yeah.
Hey, Kristen and Bob, we do have another question coming in. Do you recommend recording phone calls?
Absolutely. I do it all the time. Just be aware of your laws. So some states, you can record a conversation.
Who do you recommend for phone calls? My bad.
I use a company called Ring Central. It's about $44 a month, and they will record your incoming calls. It's incoming, so keep in mind it's not audit. You know, if you're going to record an outgoing call, you need to make sure that you're very aware of the laws around first-party knowledge. Do you have to have both parties' knowledge? It's completely different when you're calling another state, because now you're on federal law, which requires that both parties have notice. So be thinking about that when you're recording. But on incoming calls, we record them all. So on Ring Central, you can set it up to where it's kind of like when you call the call centers for the insurance companies, you get a message that says, thank you for calling, blah, 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 blah. And you get a check your life and health and make sure you're updated on your coverages. And don't forget your freezing pipes. And oh, by the way, this call may be recorded for training purposes. That little disclaimer fits all of the laws and regulations. So Ring Central is about $44 a month for their top of the line. They automatically record it. It goes into an MP4 file. And so if I finish that call and go, ooh, I need that one, I can immediately go grab it and drag it over into my Google Drive, into that RO, and have it there for life.
Okay.
So memory stick on your phone. I don't know, Dean, I'll have to look at that one. Yeah, so that takes care of that. Nick, why is State Farm against pre and post scans, especially Aztec and AirPro? Okay, let me take that one. All right, and Bob, chime in whenever you want to on this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and Jason, you can chime in on this too. When you get here at corporate at State Farm, I don't think they're against scanning at all, and I don't think they're against AirPro or Aztec at all. Here comes our problem. We think it here, and Bob will tell you, right? Because Bob would be like, this is what we think at corporate. And then by the time it got to me in the field, I was like, screw y'all, we're going to do it my way. So there's this, right? And then how do we trickle that down? And then there's all this tribal knowledge So some guy in the claim office thinks I don't have to scan anything because, you know, it's only this or that. And then some shop goes, well, okay, I'm not going to charge it. And then he stands up from his cubicle and goes, hey, I just got this shop not to charge, blah. There's a lot of factors in there. But then the other thing to think about is scanning and diagnostics, because Jason and I were just talking about this. We want to get away from saying scanning because we think that the assumption is that you're just plugging something in when you say scanning, and it's, you know, there's so much more there. But diagnostics is an expensive part of claims. And so if you look at diagnostics done the right way being about $200, the average paid claim being about $3,400, just adding diagnostics to every estimate is a huge percentage spike in average paid claim. And that's something underwriting hasn't factored for. So there's that internal struggle of suddenly, and then let's keep in mind, shops, we were supposed to have been doing this since 2000 and we weren't. And then suddenly in 2015, we were like, scan everything or die. So that's a huge jump. And I think the insurance industry is trying to figure it out. And at the same time, they're trying to figure it out. They have this massive group of employees with not a really good way of training them. So there's a misconception that insurers have all the training resources ever. And Bob will tell you, and I'll tell you, training departments were gutted.
Yeah.
They got gutted in 2008 in the last recession, and they're not there. They're just, so how do I train a bunch of people that aren't from this industry, that have been, you know, working at Starbucks or just out of college? How do I train them how to think intelligently about diagnostics?
Well, here's the thing too. I think at first they were paying for those pre and post scans, and then they came out with a policy on that I guess someone got and published it on Facebook or someplace. Might have been you, Kristen. I don't know. What they're pointing to, I think, and if you look at, say, Motors procedure pages, okay, the P pages, it's going to say that every shop is expected to have the proper equipment to fix every vehicle or any vehicle that they work on. So what they're hanging their hat on now is that, well, you should have every scanner for every car you work on, because it says that in the database. So, you know, there's the rub. I mean, do we really think we could afford to have every scanner we need for every single car? Probably not. So, you know, then I hear people getting paid for, okay, I don't have the equipment, I'm going to tow it to the dealership and then get it done. They pay for that. So it's all across the board. There's like Kristen said, there is a corporate directive on it, but it gives enough leeway for some sense to be made. But when it gets down to the field, hey, corporate told us not to pay for that, you know, and they don't pay for it, you know, or they think they're saving the company a whole bunch of money by not paying for that. So when I was representing State Farm at like big conferences like CIC and things like that, I would stand up and tell what the policy was. And I always have some guy stand up and say, why do you guys do this way? I said, that's not the way we do it. Well, hell yeah, that's the way you do it. I said, well, that's not the way the policy is. There must be some kind of manager out there that's doing things wrong. There's a lot of rogue managers out there that kind of interpret stuff their own way and do stuff their own way. So, you know, sometimes you have to go up the ladder and complain about stuff like that. So I know it's difficult because it's a tough situation, but we have to get paid for it one way or the other. So just keep persistent with it and make sense when you're charging those amounts.
And then remember, we're responsible for a lot of this. At the end of the day, shops, we are our worst enemies. I can't hold an OE position statement that says you owe me scanning, and that OE position statement says that it needs to be done on an OE scan tool while I'm standing there holding an aftermarket scan tool. That doesn't work. So we've created our own nightmare in which we were like, if I was an insurer, I'd be like, well, you people aren't following the directive anyway, because here's what the directive says, but you're not doing it. And then, you know, I'm not going to pay for it to go on this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment. So we have a lot of people trying to, because we're doing this, and then we both get in a defensive position. Some of that just comes down to having a good conversation. So like Dean was saying, safety checks, that's a huge one right now, that we're debating and going through with the insurers as well. And it comes down to training. My best response for you right now on the safety checks is I ask the adjuster as we're going through, I ask them if they're aware of the airbag matrix. Most of them don't know what I'm talking about. I go, well, you know, it's the head notes and the footnotes. So if you go to replace an airbag, the estimating system will tell you, you know, must replace the clock spring or whatever. And they go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, do you believe that those should be done? Well, yeah, we do those all the time. Airbag, clock spring, cool, no problem. We're not going to have an argument there. Well, why do you believe that? I don't know. Well, because the OE says that, if I go here in the repair procedures, I can show you the procedure that matches that head note that says if you do the airbag, you got to do the clock spring or do whatever. And so over here, I have another one, and it's not made a head note or a footnote yet. But do you see where these two things go together? So now explain to me the company's position to follow an airbag matrix, but not follow a scanning matrix or these procedures. That negotiation is working very, very effectively. And it's working because I've also got the consumer involved as well, because the consumer's like, well, why are you doing one, but you're not doing the other? I don't understand. Dean, that's the best luck I'm having so far. I'm sure I'm eventually going to get it. Well, I still ain't going to pay it. And then I'm also very aware that sometimes when I'm involved in the negotiation, things get paid because they don't want it on Facebook. So I'm not so sure it's a perfect negotiation technique right now for fighting OE procedures. And, I also think that some insurance, not I want to say insurance companies, I think that some adjusters don't know they're already paying OE procedures. That's what those matrix were when they were built into the estimating systems, as they were OE directives. We just wanted them back then because we were afraid of airbags. So, but when you can make them understand they're already paying for OE procedures, you already have a precedent. You already believe as a company that you should be doing these things. Sometimes that lets them relax. It lets them feel important, lets them feel safe, lets them feel needed, and then I can get to where I want to get to. Let's see. Do you think the crisis could be the end of field reps estimators making the control of the invoicing easier? I don't think the crisis is the end of the field reps and estimators. I think that was already coming. So, that was one of the things that we were working on. I do need everybody to understand that what was being worked on was the end of the field adjuster, not the end of the call center. So this is a completely, the bubble just got bigger because of the crisis, but there was always a move to get rid of estimators. That started a long time ago. So yeah. I'm always very candid about how I left the insurance company industry and got to here. When I started, when I was hired in 95, there was this very clear career path that I thought I wanted. I was going to be an estimator adjuster. I was then going to be a PCT. From there, I was going to be an estimating team manager. I had this career thing planned out. And I figured in 5 years, I'd have Larry Waldner's chair. I had it figured out, Bob. So, but then there was drastic changes. And I can remember being a auto claims man. I was a DRP director. So I had all of these DRP adjusters that reported to me, and we were in a regional and a zone. And I got a call from home office that said we were all getting demoted. That auto wasn't considered a technical position anymore because technically we weren't making policy decisions. And so we were going to go from, G5s to G4s, and that was going to change what you could top out. And, oh, by the way, Kristen, we know you're only 36, but you're never, ever going to get a raise again. Bob, you had people run into that. Ceiling, you're done. Right.
Yeah.
So there was already that discount of what we offered and our knowledge and what our value was. And so they started running us out the door in 2006. So we're running there. So,
well, the bottom line is to become more profitable in a business that's not, they have to do something. So what they decided to do, my belief, this isn't anything that was published, but I think that they really saved a lot of money by putting in those call center type employees to handle claims. Creating these DRPs, because as you recall, State Farm was probably the last company to go DRP.
We didn't want it. We fought it.
Right. Yeah, we fought it because we like dealing with all the shops, and then they cut that out. So, like Kristen was explaining, progressively it got worse and worse for people like us who knew collision repair, who knew auto claims, who could really make a good impact but we cost them a lot of money. It wasn't cheap. So they probably just weighed out the fact that, okay, well, we're going to probably not pay some claims right. We're probably going to overpay some. We're probably going to get sued because someone's going to screw up. But you know what? It's still a lot cheaper than having these higher dollar employees on the books and with all the benefits and everything else. So we're just going to cut it to the bare bones. And, and that's kind of what I think happened. And I think this whole thing with the crisis is going to give them more of an opportunity to do things like that under the, the flag of, well, this crisis made us think differently, man. And that's going to happen. A lot of things are going to change because of this crisis.
Yeah.
This is just one of them.
If I think back though, that thought pattern in the original consolidation of regional offices into super zones, that somewhat worked because there was still a lot of good solid leadership and experience at the table, but attrition has drained to the knowledge level. The knowledge level used to be here and they were guiding people down here, and now the knowledge level is here and they're guiding people down here. So I think we're making a lot of bad decisions.
And honestly, these managers and these claim handlers, through no fault of their own, don't know very much. They were just put in those positions, and honestly, if you've been at the company a couple of years, you get promoted, you're going to take it, whether you know how to do the job or not, whether you have experience or not, you're going to take it, and you'll figure it out when you get there. Well, they never figure it out when they get there. And now we have to deal with that on our side of the fence. So that's kind of what we were talking about today, of being more personal with these people to make them understand that, hey, I'm not here just to rip you a new one. I want to get this thing done right, and it's all about the customer. And let's, and how's your life going? How's your job going? I know it's been tough, that kind of a thing. So it's all about personal connection.
So Tom, to finish up your question, is it the end of the rep? Sure, but COVID-19 is not the reason the end of the field rep and all that's going to end. Is it going to make invoicing easier? It can. And it just depends on your ability to master these personal skills and get the customer involved and move that through. If you still try to approach the new situation with the same old way we've been doing business the last 10 years, it's actually going to get harder. You're going to get more frustrated. You're going to feel like your estimates are being cut more, that you're being controlled more. I mean, you're going to get more and more frustrated. And so you can't fight fire with fire. This is one of those situations. I love a good firefight. It makes me happy. It's my hobby. And I don't play golf. I don't fish or whatever. I get in fights and arguments. So I like them, but that's not going to be a successful way of sustaining a business in this new environment. You're going to have to learn to have those people skills. And for the love of donuts, you're going to have to learn how to connect with the customer and bring them into this process. It's the only way. So, I always used to say I could always tell a shop to go pound sand all day long. I had no contractual relationship with you, but I couldn't tell my customer to do anything. So it was a whole new round of. It used to be I couldn't tell an agent to do anything. I used to get in a lot of trouble for getting agents mad, but now nobody cares about the agents either. So.
Well, I think that in the collision business, we forget that we don't have a contract with the insurance company. The customer does. So I think we've gotten confused over the years who we're really, repairing that car for. We're not necessarily repairing it for the person who's paying the bill. We're repairing it for the person who owns the car. Whether their coverage is good enough to get that car fixed the right way is the question. So,
right.
When people say I hate dealing with insurance companies, I just say, well, then don't.
Yeah. That's the realization. Like the case that got kind of dropped on me this morning is an insurer that wants to go after a body shop for not fixing the car right per the OE. Now I know good and well it's a DRP issue too. I'm like, if the shop had wrote to take the dash out and do the safety checks and do all this stuff, you guys would have freaked out, right? But because the shop didn't write it, is exactly the evidence that's going to be used against them. So it's like, But at the end of the day, as a repairer, I have to fix the car right. There are consumer protection laws and stuff that govern me that don't govern an insurance company. An insurance company is just an indemnification of a loss. They can not pay for anything if they don't want to. And that doesn't affect me as a repairer. I still have to do the right thing.
Put the doors in there to repair the booth, and then the other guy come and fix them.
But that's a real stress these days. So, all right, well, we overstayed our welcome. I got excited. We had a great topic. And then I had technical difficulties. Bob, I don't know if you see that comment, but we got a shout out from Mike Schmitz, one of our former SF.
Yeah, so, hey guys.
Given that, I guess, am I the only one with the State Farm tattoo?
Yes, you are.
I'm the only one.
The only one.
That's what happens on Nat Cat in New Orleans. It's when you know when a State Farm tattoo. So
I've been pretty drunk, but never that drunk. Okay.
Dean, I will tell you the story how that happened. Ultimately, it was because Caterpillar sued State Farm over Nat Cat, and we lost. And I was pissed that we lost because I thought we should still get to say Nat Cat. And when I was drinking and smoking in the quarter, I ended up with a State Farm tattoo. So.
Not the worst thing that ever happened in a quarter.
Not the worst. The worst thing was I got some great stories of. We'll say those some things.
We'll do our webinar on that.
I do have a State Farm tattoo. If I started a GoFundMe, could we get a remove the tattoo GoFundMe?
Oh, that happened in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to work on pasting these two together and getting it online. And if we can't, then I will get with Bob and we'll re-record it in case you guys want to go back and watch any of this later. All right. Have a fantastic day. And we'll
Thanks,
see
everybody.
I believe, is it Thursday?
No, we're back tomorrow with Snap-on talking about calibration and target placement.
All right. So we got Snap-on tomorrow.
Yep. And we have iCar coming in on Thursday to talk about their offerings.
And iCar on Thursday. And then it looks like I'm looking right here. Tuesday, May 19th is the Google discussion. So prepare, guys. That one's going to be about an hour and a half to a 2-hour webinar. I'm going to take everybody through Google Drive. And I think we're going to go through Blaze's Google Drive because his is better than mine. I'm kind of jealous. I guess the student has become the master, so to speak. All right. Y'all have a fantastic day.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome.